Good afternoon. Welcome to the AppsEvents Summer Summit. Thank you for joining us. My name is Guto. I'm going to be your host for today, and I'm joined by Lawrence and by Cris. Good afternoon, you two.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Oh, is it good morning, Cris?
It's morning for me here, but I got my
Cris is joining us from Canada today, so it's still morning for her. Thanks for joining us a bit earlier than the rest of us. Before we start, quick thank you to Acer for Education, who's supporting us with the summit today, helping us make this available free for everyone who's going to join us and watch. All the content we're going through today, the whole video will be recorded and will be live, will be on the YouTube channel after we finish today as well. So if you do have to disappear halfway through, you can come back and finish watching at a later point. Before we go into any of our content, just notice that you do have the live chat on the side there. Might be pointing to the wrong side here, might be over here. Please use it, engage with each other, and I'm sure Lawrence and Cris will be there in the comments at some points today as well. Ask some questions when speakers are on. If you put some questions in that box, we'll have a chance at the end of each session for a quick Q&A, and any good questions we'll bring up and show. There is, by the way, mentioning Acer earlier, there is a chance to win yourself a free seat at a bootcamp or a summit. So when we do get to live in-person bootcamp summits in the future or our online ones, you can win yourself a free ticket to one of those. Go to the gsummit.link Acer, fill in that form to enter yourself in for the chance to win one of those seats. Just a quick introduction then. I said my name is Guto. I'm a trainer with AppsEvents and a primary school teacher. And Lawrence, if you come and say hello.
Hi everyone, my name is Tijjani. I'm a trainer and I'm also passionate about social mobility, and I work with disengaged children using tech.
And Cris.
Hey there. So I'm Cris the Canadian, but I am a curriculum coach and technology integrationist. So I originated teaching in Canada, but I've been working in Hong Kong and Singapore, and most recently in the UK, looking at the effective use of technology in teaching and learning. So thanks for having me.
Robert, I've been lucky enough to work with you both over the past, couple of years, Lawrence, and about a year now, I'm guessing, Cris, altogether. And back when live in-person events were still possible, we ran quite a lot of things through AppsEvents. We have moved to a virtual type of training on the whole now, although there's some schools in some parts of the world starting to go back into being in person, and there hopefully can be some live in-person training happening soon again when things come, I don't want to say back to normal, I guess closer to normal is the best way to go with that. If you are looking for training in the meantime, by the way, AppsEvents do have online bootcamps. Lawrence is going to talk a lot about bootcamp and certifications later on in the summit, but there are online trainings happening. Some of them spread out over a week, so you don't have to sit in your front room in front of a computer all day doing training. You can be chopped up and so on. Please go over to appsevents.com to find out more about those. First of all, how have you two been coping with changing from training in person and being in schools to now being in your front rooms most of the time? Lawrence?
It's been pretty interesting, I would say. It's the new norm now, but when we first started I did miss that interaction of being, in front of people, because I'm pretty much a pacer. I pace around the classroom, around the venue, and use my hands a lot. So when I'm on webinars, my hands are just going above the screen and above the camera. But I think more credit to the teachers. I think they've adapted fantastically to it and signing up and coming to be oversubscribed to some of the events that that's on. So say massive credit to teachers. I think I'm just here to help where I can.
First of all, Lawrence, when you say that you pace around the room, having been to your happiness sessions at Google earlier in the year, pacing around the room doesn't even start to begin it. I think dancing around is the most accurate description of how you were in that session.
Definitely, I'm down on my calorie counter on my watch since I stopped doing in-person training, so I can't wait to get back to it.
Cris, how about you?
What a whirlwind it's been over the last few months. So in my role previously, I work with a group of 25 schools that are spread out across the UK. So already I was sort of working with remote practices, but being back in Canada now is sort of an extreme version of remote working. But what this has really done in our schools is pushed the idea of technology to facilitate teaching and learning much higher up on schools' priority lists. And over the last few months, as Lawrence noted, it's really the teachers who have been putting in the hard work to make a lot of large-scale changes in a very short amount of time. And so we're at a really exciting place, I think, not only within the group of schools I work with, but schools around the world in reimagining what school means in this new normal and reevaluating the role of teachers and the role of technology to facilitate teaching and learning. So I think it's a hard time, but it's also a really exciting time for schools.
I think you couldn't have had more of a thorough test of what works when it comes to education technology and what doesn't work and which practice work best than we've had over the past few months. Even looking at my own school, where teachers have really stood up. They've taken on technology and practices that they've never had to use before, and to move within 3 days of hearing the news that it was happening, suddenly they're able to do all these things online. And let's just say that I think we've had quite a few video meetings, quite enough maybe video meetings happening. And Chris, you're going to talk more about that, I think, as we go on. I wonder if you two remember, just before, I want to say the world can stop, before travel lockdown, schools lockdown, we were actually at Google's office in London doing training on ISTE. Was it the very last thing? I want to say the last week before we got locked in our houses here. Certainly the last thing I remember doing. But one of the news AppsEvents has is that they set up a learning, which is AppsEvents part of doing ISTE training. Now, I don't know how many of you watching are familiar with ISTE, but they're a vendor-neutral Edtech certification, I guess. They do the show similar to BET in America, but they also have a really good certification program for teachers. And AppsEvents is now the ISTE's partner for Europe, the Middle East, and California. And you two actually have gone through the program, or are going through the program. You've got to be ISTE trainers. Tell us a bit about what the program's like and what people who are doing ISTE certification have to go through.
Absolutely. So, sorry, Lawrence, did you want to go? Or?
No, you go first, Chris.
Sorry, I'll jump. So yeah, just a note on ISTE. So we, as a school, first brought in the ISTE standards back in 2014 as a way in which to ground technology use in our schools. So I think what's really important to note is that more technology doesn't equate to more learning. We know this to be true in our schools, that it's the effective and strategic use of technology to encourage sorts of future skills and competencies that's really important. And so we look to the ISTE framework as a way to ground our teaching and learning programs, but also as a way to help teachers understand how to effectively use technology. And so the ISTE standards have been a really valuable tool in our school. And so we were very excited to see the launch of this learning program that walks teachers through the process of how to design really engaging teaching and learning opportunities for students in the digital age. So it's very hands-on, it's very practical, it's authentic to your own context. So you can kind of take the standards and apply them to what makes sense in wherever you may work. And it's been quite an opportunity going through to become a trainer and just having those conversations with other educators and starting to build an e-portfolio that showcases what this good practice looks to share out into the educator world.
I found that it was interesting. It was a 2-day face-to-face, and that so little of it was actually sitting in front of a computer and doing something. Around having those discussions, we had about 14 educators in the group, and having those discussions about best way to implement, best way to bring your school along, and not just here's a computer, here's what you can do with it. I thought that was brilliant. Lawrence, how about you?
Yeah, I thought that was fantastic. But what it did for me was it got me thinking about my practice again and gave me those 2 days to think about it, also learn new stuff and re-energize my PON. and also just see what other people were doing. So I think I really like that, the fact that I was able to take a step back and think about my practice and go, there's actually a lot of stuff for me to improve on. So yeah, I did enjoy that.
If in future you want to know more about these educations or maybe host a bootcamp yourself, the link is on the site there, aelearninglab.com. Now, in a second, I'm going to say a partial goodbye to Lawrence and Cris. You're both joining us back later on to do your sessions. So quick goodbye on that, so I can bring in one other person who's been hiding in the back here for the last 20 minutes. Good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon, Guto. Thank you very much for the invitation.
We got you. Bob is here from Acer. I want to get this right. The education manager of Acer for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. As I said, we're very thankful to Acer for their support. It's one of the ways that we're able to provide this kind of session for free, live and be recorded later. And you're going to discuss us a little bit about Acer's work, and not just on Chromebooks and Stan, but on a few things that's going on in programs in the background as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring your screen over, Bob, onto there. And
Thank
while
you.
Bob's talking, if you do have a question, please put it in the chat there, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. But for now, I'm going to disappear and leave the stage to you.
Thank you very much, Guto, and good afternoon and good morning to all of you. As mentioned by Guto, I'm working in the Acer for Education team for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I'm happy to welcome the teacher from this region, but also it's new to me to talk with teachers coming from other regions. I see people connected from the Philippines, from India, from the US. So thanks again, AppsEvents, the opportunity to talk to such a wide range of people coming from all over the world. Clearly, the question that could come up to your mind is why Acer needs a dedicated team working for education. At the end, Acer is an hardware vendor. So what we do basically is actually to bring innovative technology to the school of tomorrow. Well, we need an education team because we've realized that it's something that we cannot do alone. The device is just a piece of a puzzle that is part of the digital transformation. And this piece has to fit with all the pieces around it. So which are the other pieces? How we are approaching education. We are approaching education with an ecosystem of players. And all these players are, of course, important to deliver the best service to you. Clearly, from our side, what we need to ensure is to deliver the best technologies and to offer a best-in-class service. But at the end, we need to work closely with all the others. And I'm namely, for instance, the education resellers. And I'm using education in particular because we are working closely only with the resellers that are not just delivering hardware, but they're acting as a consultant in order to support you in the decision of which is the right technology to adopt, because every school has different needs. The device is using a platform. So you are here because you know G Suite for Education. Of course, it's important also for us as a vendor to work closely with the team that is delivering this wonderful platform to you. So we are talking with Google, and in particular with the Google for Education team. But as also mentioned before by Cris, teachers are crucial. So the teacher with the right technology is really making the difference, and is able to making the difference also because has been properly trained. That's why we are honored to be a global partner of AppsEvents. That's why we have also created an additional program called Acer Academy, because for us, the professional development is really key and a core of our value proposition. But then we also need to talk with the final end user. We need to talk with innovative school and institution. So we started 8 years ago, collaborating with European SchoolNet. The European teachers might know them because of the eTwinning project, but they also have another program called Future Classroom Lab, and we are partner. And then 2 years ago, we proudly launched a program called Acer Innovative School. So we decided to group together all the best innovative school across all our region and to have some special program with them and to meet them personally. So currently we have 35 different schools from 20 different countries and 3 different continents. And we created this program really for them to share best practices and experiences. But it was also a gold mine for us because we had the opportunity to collect feedback from the actual end user of our devices. And there are probably 3 words that are coming across all the different best practices that I was lucky to listen during this event. The first one is the development. All the schools that were able to become digital, they become digital because they were able to properly plan the digital transformation, involving the principal, involving the reseller, involving the other teachers. And developing the teacher was indeed the most important part of the transformation. This diagram is coming from a school in South Africa, but it could be applicable to all the schools that we have met in the past years. The second one is the innovation. The device is indeed giving you the opportunity to use the G Suite platform at its best, but it's also giving you the opportunity to embrace new technology, new solution. I've used the word STEAM. This is probably the most important one in this matter, but the device is also capable to support software that can help the digital literacy. So it's not just about the purely technology, it's really to give you an additional tools to empower your everyday learning. And then there is the versatility. This picture was actually taken from a school in Spain. They were not waiting for us, so it was not prepared. But I really love the way that a single device was used in 4 different ways. And the experience for the teacher was completely seamless. So she was able to run the lesson, and the students were capable to listen to this lesson in the way that they prefer. So this is the power and the versatility that a device should offer to your classroom. The decision of the Chromebook, of course, is part of the digital transformation. As I said, it's coming at the end, but it has to be taken into account. And the question is, okay, but what does it mean Chromebook for education? Are these products different from the one I can find on the online or on the retailer? Well, the answer is yes, and mainly because of 2 main characteristics. The first one, the Chromebook for education are durable. What does it mean? The Chromebook can be used by a daughter like mine that is only 7 years old up to high school students. But of course, for primary students, it's important that the device can last for the all 4 or 5 grades. So it has to be tested in the proper way. He has to resist to an accidental drop from my desk. He has to have some round bumpers, so when the students are entering the classroom and are throwing the backpack, the Chromebook can stay safe into the backpack. So all the Chromebook for education are tested in order to be student abuse resistant. It can also happen that during the daily usage, the students, and this is actually happened, they were playing with the keys while they were listening to a lesson. So that's why we introduced the so-called Anchor Keys keyboard. And what does it mean? That is almost impossible to remove the keys, because when the keys is removed, it means there has to be a repair. So it means days lost from the students to use a device. So it's important to ensure and to prevent this behavior. And on top, they're also speed resistant. So they can resist some models up to 300 millimeters of water. Actually, in Spain, it was able to resist even to a single coffee. But we need to take into consideration all these different facts that can happen in the daily classroom. And the reason why we implemented is because we were talking with schools that were giving us this kind of feedback. The other one is the battery life. So all the Chromebook for education are offering at least 10 hours of battery life, and some can also reach the 12 hours. So it means that you can leave your home with your Chromebook fully charged, and you can stay at school all the day with no issue. The second one is that the Chromebook has to be flexible. Flexible means the convertible design is probably the most important feature. We have seen the picture before. Students were using the device in 4 different ways. So this is really giving to you as a teacher the flexibility that you need. Then a very nice feature, Guto probably will talk later about how to use video during the daily life. So how can I capture videos? So we introduced a couple of years ago a camera on the cover where there is the keyboard. So in this way, I can make picture, or I can record a video in this way. So it's and creating your own video is coming more and more popular. At least this is something that we have experienced talking with schools. And then for those that are willing to do even more and to become more productive, on top of the touch display, many schools are deciding to choose a device also with an active pen. So at the end, when it comes to choose the right device, it's really important to ask the right question. And the question that you should ask yourself is, first of all, who is going to use the Chromebook? Student, teachers, primary students, secondary students, also which is the pedagogical scenario. It could be a one-to-one implementation, is a BYOD, I decide to start, or I decide to put Chromebook just in the library. So all these questions, of course, are driving your choice towards the right device. And then also how often and where are they used? Because many schools decide to leave the Chromebook at home. Other schools decide to leave the Chromebook even to the family to be used after or when the school ends. So these are the overall pictures of all the different questions that you can ask, and then together with the reseller and with your trusted network of schools will be able to answer. And as a small additional info, I would like to share with you which is the most used form factor used by school, because the form factor is probably the first element to decide, in order which Chromebook to choose on top of this display size. So if we look at all the school that adopted Chromebook last year, the most adopted form factor was the convertible with touch, because this was the more versatile. It was good for primary students, for secondary students, especially primary students love the touch functionality because it's more easy to be used. See, this was by far the most used device. Second one, the clamshell and the regular, so the more entry device, because we are also conscious that many schools needs to face with budget constraint. And in the third place, the convertible touch with pen. This was for the Chromebook decision, but as Acer for Education, the communication towards the teachers community is really crucial. So that's why in EMEA, we have created a dedicated blog. And this blog has been designed specifically for teachers. And into this blog, we are collecting different information and different news about learning skills, education trend. We are also hosting our partner of AppsEvents with some tips on how to use the G Suite for education at its best. And most importantly, we're also talking about the best practices from our innovative school. So we recently published one example from one school in Spain that were capable to start the remote learning basically during a whole weekend, because of course they were already embraced the digital path years ago. And into this blog, we have also decided to create a brand new section called Remote Learning, where we are hosting all the contributions that are coming from our collaboration partner. So the link of the blog is already listed in, thanks Guto for that. And for this and for other information, feel free to follow also our social channel, all of this purely dedicated to Acer for Education. I thank you again for your attention, and Guto, back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bob. Thanks for joining us. That I do have one question myself,
Yes.
if that's okay. In a way, I have two, but I'll merge them into one. And you've been obviously showing us the different features of a Chromebook that people need to consider before they buy. And I love the fact that you pointed out that there's not a single answer to what Chromebook should I buy. It depends on those 3 questions you asked. But do you find in talking to schools, because I'm sure that it's a two-way conversation when you do, trying to find out what features are most important to them, are there 2 or 3 key Chromebook features that you find coming back more and more that most schools need or are asking for? I'm guessing that touch is one of the obvious ones, since you mentioned that quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Touch is one of them. That, by the way, can be found either on standard clamshell or on the convertible device. Then durability. So being ruggedized is indeed the most requested ones, and is also the one that is differentiating the Chromebook for Education versus the others. So please pay attention when we are deciding not to choose a device that has been built for the consumer market, because the durability cannot be certified. And then also something that is pretty nice is the USB Type-C port. The fact that it's been full functional, it means that I can use it for charging. And I've asked before, one of the questions is where they are stored. So for instance, if the device remains at schools, many schools are also using a note card in order to charge this device. And having, let's say, a default connector, like USB Type-C port for charging, is indeed very important, because one charger can fit with many different Chromebooks. So I don't need to change between different adapters, you know. And another one that I found really interesting is the world-facing camera. So having the camera here on the seat cover can really make the difference, because it's turning the lessons into something more interactive, because you can ask students to take their own video. So you can really unleash the creativity of the teachers, and this can be applicable to all the different subjects. It could be math, it could be history, it could be geography. So this feature is probably the one that is unleashing more creativity to teachers.
Thanks. And the other one is, and it might be too early to tell on your part in terms of changes due to how schools have gone into remote learning and now possibly hybrid learning, and who knows what going forward. I don't know if there's been a long enough period for that to change in schools messaging to you, but obviously in the past you had a few schools lucky enough to be one-to-one schools, while others, you mentioned the carts to be shared around there. I don't know, and tell me if it's the case of you just don't know yet, but do you feel that there might have to be, schools might have a change in the future, moving more towards going towards one-to-one if they're able to, because that children might have to learn at home at times? Or I know at our school we had to hand out a lot of our Chromebooks to children who just didn't have that device at home. Have you noticed a change yet in what schools are telling you, or do you think that's something that is still developing? It
will come. I'm Italian, so clearly looking at Europe, we were the first country that entered the lockdown, and Italy was a country where the digitalization was not a very high level. So suddenly, from one day to another, all the teachers were suddenly, desperately looking for updates and oh my God, I need to become digital in 1 week. Well, actually, the first recommendation that we gave is don't be in a rush. So start again with a proper planning, because if you introduce the technology in the bad way, it's better not to. It's better to wait.
Very true.
That's the worst thing that could happen is really to introduce the wrong technology at the right moment. So despite the time was very complicated, I was happy to see that many schools decided to do the things slowly, and first of all to get trained on the solution. Now the one-to-one, I think it's the ultimate goal. So if we look at the countries where the digitalization is at a higher level, so the Nordics, the UK, and also Spain, all the schools that embrace the one-to-one are convinced about the moving, and they will never go back. But at the same time, a good experience could be to start with small piloting, let's say. And the good thing of a platform that is cloud-based is that even at the beginning, you don't have the Chromebook, you still can benefit of the platform. Even on the smartphone app, I know it's not the right choice, but many schools started, especially in Italy, in this way. So using the smartphone, the parents. And then progressively, they will start adopting the technology. And I'm happy to see that Italy, like many other countries, decided to invest a lot in serving unprivileged children, giving an opportunity, in any case, to have their own device. So this is probably the trend that will happen. And as Cris mentioned before, it was a tough period, but we need to be resilient. We need to look at the bright side. And the bright side is now teachers, even the most reluctant one towards technology, now they have an opportunity. They realize there is a big opportunity to become digital in the right way, of course.
I think that's a great point, that so many schools have started pushing into the cloud and pushing into more technology over the past couple of months, and they're not rushing it. They work out what the future holds for you. And the second is that you can start with G Suite, for example, first of all, on your existing technology, and bring in Chromebooks and so on as time comes on.
Yeah.
To build that. Our school started with 5, I think, 4 years ago, and we've managed to build up since then.
It's pretty normal. It's pretty normal. And as I said, many schools, they start with the G Suite for education, and then the Chromebook, let's say, becomes the natural choice at the end when all the schools is under the same platform. Of course, you can choose of any brand. No, this I'm joking. But indeed, starting with the right platform and with the right planning, then, as I said, the Chromebook becomes the natural choice because it has been built to work with this specific platform.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're going to hang around probably, but you'll be in the back room. And thanks so much for coming and sharing that with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the teachers connected. Thank you.
We're going to say goodbye to Bob there, and we're going to bring in Cris back. Hello, Cris. How are you again? Just to get your title right again, you're a learning technology and innovative consultant. Now, your last role was very design thinking focused. Am I right in saying that? Your microphone's off, Cris. Cris, if I stop you 1 second, your microphone is on mute. If I give you a second to try, and there we go.
There we go. Classic start to a presentation. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Yeah, absolutely. So my role is kind of two-pronged. On one side, it's looking at the effective use of technology, but on the other side, I look at innovative approaches to teaching and learning in a world that technology has changed. So design, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're using design thinking as one of the approaches to innovate our teaching practices.
I don't want to spoil the first part of your session, but just for those who are not aware, can you just give me a very quick one-sentence explanation of what design thinking actually is?
Absolutely. It's a bit of a difficult term to kind of define because of its abstractness, but essentially it's this way in which designers can build products that's very focused on the end user. So it brings in these concepts of empathizing with the end user, creative thinking, prototyping, as a way in which to come up with a really great solution for authentic problems in the world.
And we're going to get a demonstration of what's that like in a second, a hands-on demonstration, am I right in saying?
I think so. I think I might have to rope you and Lawrence into this, and hopefully we'll have a participation from those of you at home as well.
We'll see how it goes. Just a note before you start, the link, the bit.ly link is now on the screen. If anyone wants to follow along with the presentation, they don't need to from where I can stand. They can just watch and think about themselves. But if you want to join Cris and scroll through the slide deck yourself, you're welcome to do so. And also there is Cris's Twitter. Make sure you go and follow her. I'm going to leave you there and enjoy, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much, Guto. So I'm actually going to start this session today by playing a short clip of a video. So this idea of looking at objects in new ways and making things work in a makeshift manner is something I think all of us as educators have been thrust into. And one of my side things I've been looking at during these times is people's makeshift offices, how we've just had to quickly set up shop and continue teaching in these new environments. And I think also this whole idea of homemade masks during the COVID-19 pandemic has been a big trend as well. So taking everyday materials we may have in our homes and coming up with a really useful product that we can use. Now, back in Canada, we had a severe shortage of PPE when the pandemic hit. And so in our households, we were asked to donate all of our masks to our frontline workers. And so that left us creating and designing our own masks if we weren't on the front lines. And I thought it was such an interesting design thinking project that was happening across our society. Now, some not as effective as others, some of the mask prototypes I saw, but creative nonetheless in making do with what we have and being creative about those things around us. Now, we see this not only from individuals, but also companies as well. So again, back in Canada, we saw companies like Bauer, one of our mass producers of hockey equipment, quickly pivot from making ice hockey masks to productive equipment for our frontline workers. So not only on an individual, but on a corporate scale, we see this quick thinking on your feet sort of approach to things and the creative use of what we have to solve real problems in our world. And we see other examples of this through things like handless door openers and a lot of the medical innovations that have come out in the last few months and hopefully with the vaccination of the virus as well. So what is it that leads to this creative thinking? What leads to this type of innovation on both small and large scales? It's something that, of course, we're all exploring during these uncertain times, but it's also something that we've been exploring for the past few years with our schools to ensure that upon graduation, our students are not only equipped with the content knowledge they need from more traditional school systems, but they also have the mindset to be flexible, to take risks, to look at things from different perspectives, to become entrepreneurial and to be innovative in whatever they choose to do. So one of the ways in which we encourage this type of thinking in our schools is by applying a design thinking framework. And as kind of noted at the beginning here, design thinking sort of originated in this realm of designers looking at designing solutions for customers. But it really is something that has picked up steam in a lot of different areas and can be applied to many different situations. So it includes 5 key stages to get to these innovative solutions that I spoke of. So the first is to empathize. So really truly understand the end user. Don't come up with a solution right away. Instead, spend time really understanding what the problem is, understanding those involved. And then we move on to this defining stage where we then narrow down what the problem is into one key sentence that's going to drive the rest of the project. Next, we move on to this stage of ideation or brainstorming, coming up with lots of ideas. And we often say this thing, quality over quantity, but in this case, we want quantity. And then from that quantity of ideas, so lots and lots and lots of ideas, we can start narrowing down and seeing what will work and take out those quality ideas from the masses. The fourth stage is then to start prototyping. So actually building models or examples of what that idea is and how it may solve the problem that was defined earlier. And finally, testing it out on that end user group that we empathized with at the beginning. Now, you see this funny shape to this framework, and that's because it's meant to represent the different types of thinking that are encouraged through design thinking. So at first we have this divergent thinking where we open things up and explore possibilities, but then we narrow it down into more convergent thinking where we're deciding what to do, and then subsequently you see it opens back up and then closes back down again. So we're very explicit in showing these this framework and these types of thinking with our students to encourage them to lean into the struggle of ambiguity as we go through design thinking projects. Now we were facilitating these projects primarily face-to-face within our schools, large scale and one-day sort of events. But what we found was once we moved to remote learning, we had to reimagine the way in which we approached the facilitation of this type of thinking with our students. Now, because down here, it's not so linear where we go step by step by step by step, it's more cyclical. We really encourage this idea that just like we're asking you to go through these cyclical, unsure kind of cycles of design thinking, we're going to then take that and apply it to this whole situation we're in right now. What better time to apply design thinking to come up with innovative solutions to solve the problems that we in schools are looking at right now? So we establish how might we statements for projects. One of the examples we looked at the other week with our 15, 16-year-old students was this: how might we redesign the video calling experience to fight Zoom fatigue? So this whole concept that's been in the news about people being on video conferencing for way too much of the day. I'm sure right now you can probably relate to this whole idea, but we put it out to our students. How might we redesign, our learning experiences to fight this sort of Zoom fatigue that you may be going through? And so I'm going to walk you through kind of a design thinking sprint. So we're going to go really quickly through those 5 stages to explore this statement of how we might redesign video calling in current times. So let's start with this empathize stage. So we need to really understand what people are going through. And so for this task, we would use technology to connect the girls into sort of breakout groups where they can discuss how they're feeling on the other end of learning experiences. So what it feels like for them to be away from their friends, isolated, but still participating in online activities. So we use things like Google Drawings to give templates for students to help guide these conversations they have with their peers. So empathy maps map out these different feelings that people have. So what they think and feel, what they're seeing around them, what they say and do, what they hear, just to get a better idea of what they're going through. So one part of it is the understanding that others are going through the same thing. But the flip side is also this will feed into the bigger project of them redesigning these video conferencing experiences during remote learning. So we like to use Google Drawings, but we may also use other sort of collaborative spaces. We could use Google Slides or Jamboard as well for the girls to be able to share their ideas to start building that learning community that we want. Now, once we do that empathize stage, we then go on to defining the problem. So we have that understanding. Let's narrow it down into defining. And in design thinking, we call this the problem statement. And with our students, we give a really simple framework, sort of fill in the blank for their problem statements. So it looks like this. Username, or that person, is a, and whatever user characteristics might describe that person. So as an English teacher, I'm also going to push an adjectives lesson here to get some really quality description words about that person, who needs a way to, whatever they may need to do, because they value, and whatever insights might have been pulled from the empathy map activity we gave them earlier. So if we consider this idea of how might we redesign the video conferencing experience, and I realize this is a bit meta because I'm focusing on this topic whilst you're also on video conferencing, but an example of a problem statement for this that I'd like us to explore a bit further may look like this. So Cindy is a hardworking, dedicated, frustrated student who needs a way to more effectively learn during remote learning because they value their community and connection and her education. So we're looking at how can we better enable this sort of community and sharing and learning opportunities for Cindy while we're in remote learning or hybrid learning models. And this sort of problem statement we can apply to lots of different scenarios. So we've also had problem statements just around problems that students may see around them. So, how their parents are trying to figure out, more safe kind of vacation alternatives, how they can help out more with cooking around the house, how they might be able to connect with their friends. It's really wide open, the types of problem statements students can create. But let's stay on this one here. So when we dive into the next stage, I'm going to ask for you to kind of follow along and participate as we explore this problem statement of how Cindy needs a more effective way to learn online for her education. So let's go into that ideation stage, this brainstorming stage, lots of ideas over fewer ideas. And for this stage, we're going to do crazy eights. Now, this is a simple ideation activity that we do with students where essentially you have 8 minutes to draw 8 different ideas. But the key here is that you only have 1 minute per idea. So for this task, I'm also going to ask if Lawrence and Guto can come join me in this space, but also those at home, if you can have a sort of writing implement or paper or some way that you can do some quick sketches, I'm going to invite you to participate in this activity. So I'll give a moment for those guys to join me here and just say hello when you're back in this space.
We're here.
Hello.
Hello.
What are you going to make us do?
You never quite know, eh?
Nothing like audience participation to make someone nervous.
Yeah.
So this is exactly how we feel when we implement the design thinking. We're going to lean into that struggle, lean into that ambiguity. But I thought it'd be nice if you could join us to do this activity of crazy eights. So we're going to have 1 minute, and I've just put 1 minute on the clock here. And we're going to draw an idea that might solve Cindy's problem. So Cindy is a frustrated student who needs a better way to engage in her learning during remote learning. So she's got Zoom fatigue. So we're going to think of some different ideas for her to have a better learning experience. Sound good, guys?
Yeah.
Good.
All right. So our first minute, and those at home, I encourage you to follow along. So your first minute for your first sketch begins now.
I'm letting you know now, my drawings are horrendous.
I don't think you can pick the worst artists to be doing it.
All right, our first minute is up. So what we're going to do is Everyone always says the same thing too, that their drawing's not good enough, but it's not about having a really detailed drawing. It's about getting your ideas out. So at this point, we're going to do it again, but I'm going to ask you with that first idea, put it completely aside. Even if you haven't finished it yet, put it aside. And I want you to now draw a new idea. And that minute begins now.
I think I've ever finished early before.
Me too.
All right, our second minute is up there. So what we find when we do this activity with students is sometimes it's too much time for them and sometimes it's not enough. But it's all about kind of sitting in that moment and spending that whole minute trying to conceptualize an idea, but then also moving quickly to another idea. So we get that quantity of ideas up. So guys, I was wondering if you would be able to show your drawings, because we don't have the ability for those participating to show some of their drawings. I wonder if you'd be so kind as to show yours and maybe say a few words about your drawing to solve this problem.
Lawrence, we're clearly going to you first on this one.
I don't mind. Get out of the way. So, can we see that? All right. It's a teddy bear. Yeah, exactly, about my drawing. So it's a teddy bear. So each time someone wants to talk, they pass the teddy bear around digitally. So there's no kind of that odd moment of going, so it's clear for the person to get their chance to talk in the classroom. I've also got, this was more straightforward because this is kind of wireframing, a computer screen, and it's got break time flashing up on there. So essentially, every so often, based on the teacher, they can put in break times that actually flash up on all the screens, and it stops the kids from, you know, trying to carry on with the work, but just to get those 5 minutes away from their screen time. And then the last one is different cards that they can flash up as well on the screen. So a red card if they're already stuck, a green card if they get the topic and they're clear and they're ready to move on, because we have that awkward moment where we're like, is everyone okay? And then no one replies. So they can just do that. And then the amber card as well. And then with the amber card, all the cards are collated and counted, and the teacher knows whether to readdress their teaching or they might need to go and get some help a fellow student, another student, should I say. So those are my ideas.
Wow. Fantastic. You got a lot done in those 2 minutes, Lawrence. Great. What I like about it is it's kind of exploring different ways in which you could solve that problem. And as you can see from the drawings, it's just very basic sort of sketches that become the jump off point for explaining your ideas. Awesome. So Guto, do you mind sharing one or two of your ideas?
Yeah. Well, I started off with the snacks button, that when things are starting to struggle, I find that when I'm doing lessons in real life, especially trainings, that when things get hard, you need to get some Haribos or something out there for people to eat. So this is the button that a teacher can press. I don't know, maybe it tells Deliveroo to bring food to everyone. I wasn't quite sure how the data protection would work on that one, sharing all the kids' address out. So my idea could marry with Lawrence's one, actually, his break time. Mine is now the disco button. Let me get that on camera right. And the idea is that when people are flagging, when you need that break, you hit the disco button and your choice of cheesy music blasts, screen flashes. If anyone's got a house with smart lighting, the smart lighting is linked in and does a dance, and everyone has a big dance, and then you sit down and go back to work. That's my multi-million-pound idea made in your minutes.
Great, thanks guys. So hopefully you get a better idea of types of different ideas that people come up with. And as you noted there, Guto, you started almost connecting your ideas to Lawrence's ideas. And that's what we start to see is once we get all of our ideas out and start talking about them, it enables us to make the connections between different ideas and perhaps see a problem from a different perspective than we may have originally looked at it from. So thanks, guys, for sharing those ideas. I'm going to kind of share some examples of some other ones that we had done on this activity. So, you can see they're very crude drawings, but we're just trying to get out all of our ideas. And then what we do with the students is we do a lot of sorting and connection or visible thinking routines where we start to talk about things like, okay, how feasible are these ideas? Or how much impact will that idea have? How can you connect your idea with someone else's in the classroom and start thinking about things a little bit differently? What we also find with the students is when they're getting down ideas, they often will focus, when we talk about technology anyway, on features of the technology itself. So as noted by Lawrence, there is an idea about a teddy bear functionality within video conferencing to make people feel more comfortable. And we see lots of examples of different features being added on to video conferencing. So at this point, what we'd want to do is push students' thinking to think a little more about the end user. So not so much about the solution, but how you want that person to feel while you're coming up with a solution. So we give different prompts based on the activities, but for this activity, I may show them something like the Out of the Box by Samsung. So this idea that during these times, there may be a problem statement around how seniors are more isolated in their homes. And so we want to come up with some new technology that can help them connect with other people and to easily video conference. But if through further exploration and talking to the end users, they may describe features such as just one click of a button to be able to video call, or just being able to see or chat with my family really easily through a few pushes of a button. Essentially, that is something that exists already, right? That is basically a smartphone. So I may show them a prompt like this to get them thinking differently about the experience of the end user. So instead of designing a completely new piece of technology, what was created here was an accompanying guide to help those who may be struggling with the use of their smartphones. So here you see the format is in this book form. It easily shows the user how they might insert their SIM card, how they might put the battery in a way and in a format that really makes sense for the end user group being senior citizens. If I just forward through this video, what you'll also see is that there's an accompanying manual for being able to connect with others using the smartphone. So I'm just going to forward to that part. Okay, so this second book that comes in sort of shows just simple instructions for how you might chat with other people, how you might send a text, but in a format that would make sense for the end user. So if we were doing this sort of, how do we fight this video conferencing fatigue with our students, we may then push them to do one more idea, but it can't be a feature for Zoom. So I'm going to do this 1 minute Crazy 8 challenge with you one more time, but this time I'm going to urge you not to draw a feature that could be related to video conferencing, but I want you to come up with an idea that is about the experience of the end user. So how do you want Cindy as a student at home to feel when she connects for remote learning? So 1 minute on the clock. This is our last Crazy 8 together, and your minute starts now. All right, so our minute's up there, and this activity is called Crazy Eights because we typically would do this 8 times with our students. Sometimes we'd even do it several times, so they have lots of different ideas. But I think it's important for you to kind of go through the process of what this feels like for a student to get that understanding of the pain points, the difficulties. For one, it does become that there's a mindfulness aspect to it when you're kind of just focused on that one idea and there's that calm of getting that idea down. But what you may have found as you go through and come up with more and more ideas, it gets more and more difficult to come up with something. And that's sort of pushing you to go beyond your initial reaction to think a little bit differently about the problem. We see some pretty wild ideas that come out once we get down to like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. In this activity. But that feeling as well for our students of the unknown of like, am I doing this right? What is this? We feel it's really important to ensure that our students know what that feels like and know how to cope with that feeling, to be able to produce things within a school environment when it's not clearly laid out on a syllabus before that. So we also do activities like yes and. So when someone shows their idea or shares it, we say yes, and we can add on this crazy idea for it. So in Guto's example where he has snacks connected to the video conferences, I may say something like, yes, and there's a beverage choice as well, or yes, and we could have themed hat weeks to go along with our calls or things like that. But avoiding this no, but to stay in that positive zone to come up with lots of ideas. We often use Jamboard for this collaborative process because it easily enables you to add sticky notes, but then we can move them around to do some of those clustering and connecting activities that I mentioned before. For the sake of time, though, let's go on to our next stage of design thinking, which is one of my favorite stages, which is when we start to prototype ideas with the kids. And so a prototype is just a simple example of what the idea may look like, where we don't want to invest too much time or materials into it, just in case when we test it, if it's not a good idea, we don't want to have such a strong attachment to it where we can't let it go and move on to a better idea. So we may do things on paper. We may use things like Google Slides to start to prototype what an app solution may look like. But we also use a lot of recycled and reusable materials. So here for this is a prototype for a sort of bionic arm, and it just uses cardboard and straws and bits of string. We find this really important to combine the tangible and intangible. So we work primarily digitally to encourage that online collaboration, but then we bring it into the physical world through models and prototypes that we can touch and feel. And then we may bring it back into the digital world by taking pictures of the prototypes, but we feel it's important for students to be working with their hands as well. So we encourage this prototyping of ideas, and we've been putting in what we call design hubs in our schools across the country just to be a safe space for students to build and make and create these very abstract solutions they may be coming up with. And the final stage, once we have a physical prototype, is to then test it out on our user group. And so to test it out, we often give students a framework around pixel stories. So just small snapshots of what their idea is all about in a very short amount of time. So we like to do 1-minute pixel stories so that students have the opportunity to pitch their ideas many different times. And so a pixel story framework looks like this. Once upon a time, there was, and whatever the user is described as. Every day they had this problem until one day, whatever their prototype is, the first feature of the solution is, another feature of the solution is, until finally, whatever the results are. And ever since then, whatever the long-term impact may be, the end. So a simple framework that's really focused on the end user, but becomes something that we use with 5-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and it works across all those age levels. So that very quickly is an overview of design thinking and how you might go about facilitating such an approach to teaching and learning with students. I think what's really key here is that people often think success is a straight line, that it's step by step by step, and then you're successful. But I think in actuality, what it really looks like is a messy, tangled, journey of an experience. And so we're creating those environments within our schools to help our students be able to manage and navigate that messiness to become future learners. So while we're exploring how might we redesign the video calling experience to fight that Zoom fatigue, what we're really exploring as schools is how might we give agency and encourage action during these uncertain times, or how might we provide engaging remote learning opportunities with our students? Because what we're trying to do in our group of 25 all-girls schools is really encourage the next generation of female entrepreneurs and leaders. And so thank you so much for joining me in this session. And I'd be happy to open it up for Q&A if you'd like to learn more about our mission. So thank you.
Thank you massively, Cris. I've watched you present on design thinking before, and I still feel that I learn so much every single time you do one. I don't know if that's you changing the content or me just noticing things I didn't notice before. Just a few questions before you disappear, if that's okay. First of all, someone in the chat was talking about equity. And I know that in the past you've been able to be places where you can have a room full of resources specifically for creating prototypes and so on. When you think of, obviously, many schools, this is something that happen in the normal classroom as part of day-to-day lessons. How easy is it to jump into a design thinking process without having a mass of resources and all that, an experience, I guess? How easy is it to just jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the group of schools that I work with primarily, we are quite diverse. So we have independent schools, but we also sponsor academies. And we aren't one-to-one devices across all of our schools. We have a lot of different scenarios. But what I think design thinking has the capabilities to do is encourage those future skills that we talked about that are part of those ISTE standards, this idea of being a creative communicator, a collaborator, all of these skills we talk about that will be important in a tech-enabled world, but can be done without technology as well. So for some of the design thinking projects we do in our school, we do them more analog. So we don't have the girls on devices at first as we introduce them to this framework. Now, this approach, because it's so collaborative in nature, it does work better when the students are on devices, but we absolutely run these types of things in the analog world as well, because for us, it's not being able to use a particular piece of technology that's important. What's important is that they're open to this mindset and this way of thinking that will later on be transferable to the use of technology. So we want those transferable skills. In terms of bringing in maker spaces, we do have a few sort of innovation hubs we've put in our schools. But to be perfectly frank, when they first came to me to ask for designs for such spaces, they said, we're making this new innovative space. What do we need? And my response to them was a pile of cardboard boxes and some good teachers, because it's more about this approach than a really fancy room in which to do it in. So we have these sort of makeshift maker spaces in some of our schools that are really just all of the recycling in one place to enable the kids to be building models.
And if I'm looking at the comments you've got, thank you, great, clearly explained and all this. If someone's watching saying, like, right, I want to give it a shot, I want to try doing something through a design thinking process, top tip, what did you tell them keep in mind when you're starting along that journey?
Sure. So I think just like the design thinking process is all about trying and testing and then learning from mistakes and trying it out again. I would say do the same thing in your context, that, you know, start with a small scale design thinking project. So what we have had a lot of success with in our schools is doing 1 day off timetable events with the girls, where not only students have the opportunity to understand design thinking, but teachers can see it in action. And so we run these 1 day events so that teachers can then bring it back to their classrooms and say, you know what, I could facilitate this next history project through this approach to teaching and learning. So kind of start with those small scale example projects, and then give that flexibility, and then that enables teachers to take those risks within their own classroom.
You mentioned that sometimes you do the 1 day outs there. Basically, a question from Lisa is, do you have a specific time frame for design projects when you do them?
Yeah, so it fully depends on the project. So so last Friday we ran a session for 100 girls online, and it lasted 2.5 hours. So it was a design thinking sprint through that concept of redesigning the video conferencing experience. But we also do sometimes week-long projects. I've just concluded a 6-week online course for our older girls, which was 1 hour of synchronous time per week with some activities in between. But I also, as a teacher previously, would run kind of 6-week long projects as well. So that's what I like about this, is the flexibility of it, that really the 5 stages of that framework are really clear for teachers to be able to follow, but it has a lot of flexibility to customize it to your own context.
And talking about customizing, Tina mentions that, yes, running through the whole thing is great, but I guess you can take parts of the process as starter activities to help others. She's talking about the 8 post-it notes and using that as a starter activity, even if you're not going through the whole process every time.
Absolutely. And I think the key thing that I've noticed in implementing design thinking in schools is often not enough time is given to the prototyping and testing phases. That because we're so short on time in schools, teachers will say, okay, well, whatever their first prototype is the one they have to hand in, because we got to move on to the next project. So actually that second part of the framework, we try to spend more time on. Maybe 2/3 of the project is just the last 2 stages. Because if we say you have freedom to fail and try new things, then we need to ensure that we have the opportunity for students to do just that and to scrap an idea and start over.
I like the idea of making mistakes is fine, scrapping an idea is fine. I think the first time I went through a design thinking process, they had a bell. And if you were completely changing idea at some point, you go ring that bell, because that's something to celebrate.
Absolutely, a fail bell.
Final question. How many post-it notes do you go through in a year?
My post-it budget is out of control. No, we actually, as we move through the process and we connect between our 25 different schools, we find more and more we're working in digital spaces. So I'd say previously it was very high. Moving forward, might be a bit lower.
Good to know. Oh, are you okay? We'll leave you there so you can go investigate what the bag is there. Massively
the cats.
The cats. I know that you're going to hang around with us for a little bit, and I'm sure someone puts a question in the comments that you'll be there to answer if needed. But thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to skip forward now and welcome back Lawrence. How are you doing, Lawrence?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, again, you're a former computing head of faculty. You've mentioned already that you're passionate about social mobility, and you're obviously also a Google trainer and do a lot of work with us here at AppsEvents. For some reason, I'm still calling you Chris at the bottom there. Let's move on to that. You can find him at Just a Guy. Lawrence, if you haven't been to a Lawrence session before, he is a man well worth listening to. If anyone can make you passionate about a topic, it's definitely Lawrence. Not that I'm putting all the pressure on you for the next 20 minutes, half an hour or so, Lawrence. But you're going to talk to us about certifications. Is that right?
That is correct. I want to talk to you about certifications and Google certifications that you can obtain, but also add in my journey and how I got my different certifications as well.
Fantastic. In that case, your screen is now shared. I'll disappear and I'll see you in about half an hour.
Thank you, Guto. Right, hi everyone. So as mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk about Edtech certifications, mainly focusing on the Google certifications. So just before I go into that, I'm just going to talk about my journey and how that was. Whoops. So first thing was, I was familiar with the Google tools. I had used them with my business, but I'd never really introduced them in school because I hadn't really seen the need for them. A couple of years later, I introduced it to my school because I was also responsible for ICT across the curriculum. And when I stood up in the staff meeting, I said, "Oh, I've got this great idea. Why don't we use Google for Education?" And as it might be, if you've ever been in charge of ICT across the curriculum, there were a roll of eyes like, "Oh no, not another initiative." But I was really passionate about it because I found the platform intuitive. So I did speak to members of staff. Unfortunately, not that many members of staff took it up. So I was implementing it in my department and using it with my teachers and students. Then when the penny really dropped is when I actually attended a back to school summit, which I actually found out about AppsEvents as well. But what was fantastic about it was I was seeing other educators use it. So I thought I was doing some groundbreaking stuff at my school, just getting students to upload resources to Classroom. But some of the stuff that I saw there was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was just nice to be in an environment and learn of other colleagues in that summit. And I'll talk about something called your PLN, which is your personal learning network, further on, and how important that is and how that's helped me along with my journey. So after that, I did my level 1 and level 2, which I'll explain a bit later. And then in January 2019, I became a Google certified trainer. And then later on in the year, I was accepted to the Google Innovator Academy, and I went to Sweden. So all of this I'll talk about and how you can obtain these certifications as well. So there are 4 different levels of certifications. So you've got your level 1, Google Educator, a level 2, a certified trainer, and then your certified innovator as well. So I'm going to go through all these different levels during this presentation, and feel free to pop in any questions you might have during the presentation. So what is the purpose of level 1 and 2? It's essentially to demonstrate your mastering of the variety of Google tools. And a lot of you are probably using the Google tools. So why not get certified for it? You know, you're amazing teachers. You're using them day in and day out in your classroom. Get certified for it. Why not? So level 1 focuses on the fundamentals of the Google application tools in the classroom. Okay. And the standard technology that you might go and implement your skills as well. Level 1 consists of 13 units, and there's about 14 hours to kind of complete. Now, I say 14 hours quite loosely because it depends how much time you've got to do it. It depends how you learn as well. So don't feel pressured or feel that that might be too long. It just depends on how you work through those units. And on this deck is a link to resources. So there's a teaching training center as well. And you can go through these different units. And there are videos on there. There are some ways to get some practice as well and information to get certified. But What you can also do is, if you would like to do something a bit more intense and to get guided through the units, that's something that AppsEvents does offer. And Guto will probably speak about that more towards the end of it. But here are some links there. And if you're following along in the slide deck, you can just click on that link to go and see the Teacher Center as well. So level 2 ups it a bit more. It focuses on using Google Tools for Education in order to successfully integrate the tools and transform your lead in practice. So it's going one step further in kind of substituting some of the tasks that you might do using technology to actually changing the way you might deliver it completely and transforming your learning as well. So this is 11 units and takes around 12 hours to complete. And again, you can go to the Teaching Training Center to find some more information on this as well. So like I just said earlier there, and it's in the same kind of format as mentioned before. So when I first started to do my level 1 and level 2, I looked at it and I thought, wow, there's a lot to get through. There's a lot to get through here on top of my normal teaching as well. But luckily, I was able to find a boot camp, and I attended the boot camp, and it was fantastic in terms of not only did I pick up the new skills that I needed to pass the test as well, but it went a lot further than that. It didn't just focus on, right, here's what you need to do for the test. It kind of got me to think about, actually, how do I use this tool here? Why do I want to use that tool? Because I think it's very important that we don't just use tools for the sake of using it. It's got to have an impact in your classroom. So I did find the bootcamp very helpful in terms of preparing for my level 1 and my level 2. So a few things about the exam. You must have a webcam enabled for the duration of the test as well. And be sure to register 48 hours ahead, so you make sure you can get your login in time. And just sometimes check your spam if you don't get it within 24 hours. You will be given a special login, so you won't be able to do it under your school domain or like that. It will be a unique login for that exam. Both level 1 and 2 are timed, and it's 180 minutes. So it's 3 hours. They're a combination of matching, drag and drop, and performance-based scenarios, and also multiple choice questions as well. Levels 1 and 2 are valid for 36 months and 3 years from the date of issue. So you will have to retake them once it's expired, but you will get a notification 60 days before they do expire. Okay, what about if I don't pass? In some cases, you might not pass, but it's pretty rare. But if you don't pass, you can do it a second time, but you have to wait for 14 days to do that. If you don't pass the second time, you then have to wait 60 days to take it a third time. And if you don't pass the third time, you need to wait a year. But don't get disheartened about it. And what I refer back to again is your PLN network, your personal learning network. They're fantastic. They're a group of teachers, and that could be anywhere. It could be on Twitter, it could be on Facebook, it could be on LinkedIn, that actually will support you during taking these certifications. It's one of the best things I would say that I've got out of this certification, of getting access to a wider PLN network. And just on each one, every time you do have to retake, it is a payment is required. Testing tips, okay? Be prepared to sit for the 3 hours. No kidding, be prepared to do that. Shut out distractions. So get rid of the pets. I can't say get rid of the kids, but maybe ask your partner to take the kids out for the day. I sent my wife out because I didn't want her to disturb me. So yes, get rid of your wife or husband when you're sitting that test. Make sure you have reliable internet. That is key. That is key to it, because you don't want it to go down when you're doing your test. Recommended that you do it in incognito mode as well, so it just doesn't default back to your personal Gmail account or your school Gmail account. And another tip is to pin the tab, because you don't want to actually close a tab by mistake as well. So we've gone through level 1 and 2. What we're going to move on to now is being a Google certified trainer. So I had done my level 1 and 2, and I was kind of thinking, what's the next step? I spoke to a few people in my PON, and they said, Lawrence, why don't you go off and do a certified trainer? So I did that. And to become a certified trainer, you need to have your level 1 and 2. Okay. And as I said, look, a lot of you are doing training sessions in your school or supporting members of staff. Why not share your magic with the world? So you need to be passionate about GFE tools and classroom technology. And most of you will want to help others because you're doing that role in your school potentially. So why not become a certified Google trainer? It just gives you a chance to present at different platforms as well. And also what I found was, even though I was helping members of staff in my school or holding training, once they saw that I became Google certified, they listened to me a bit more. I don't know why, but they did. So it doesn't matter where you are in your structure in your school. You don't have to be a classroom teacher. You can be an assistant. You can be the director of IT. And one of the most passionate, I would say, trainers that I know is a guy called Abid. And if most of you probably will know Abid, absolutely fantastic IT director, was always involved, thinking of ways on how to help teachers as well. So the more people you can get in your organization of being trainers is actually fantastic, because what they can also be is your Google champions in your school. So requirements. You've got to complete a trainer course online, and that's about 6 hours approximately. Pass the trainer skills test. And be Google certified level 1 and 2. And film a 3-minute trainer video. Now, the 3-minute trainer video was, it's that weird bit. I've done the assessment, I've done the trainer, I've passed that. The trainer bit video took me some time to do, because I was thinking, oh, what am I going to do? Because you've got to talk about yourself as well and why you want to become a Google trainer. And then you've got to demonstrate you showcasing a Google tool. So the demonstration of being a Google tool wasn't a problem. It was actually talking about myself, because actually, talking about yourself, I find quite difficult sometimes. But everyone else was like, yeah, Lawrence, you can do this, no problem. You do it all the time. You don't stop talking, so you shouldn't find it hard to do. But I eventually got around to doing it. And essentially what you just want to do is bring yourself to the table. You are doing this already, and it's just highlighting your personality as well. Then you've got to submit your application and case study. So it will be asking you questions about some of your last 5 training sessions, and how you went about planning it, how you went about evaluating it as well. So one of the key things I would say to you now is, if you're doing training in your school, make sure you're keeping a record of it, because this can support you with your application. So I know a lot of you may have been showing members of staff of how to use Classroom, particularly in this time during the coronavirus. So it's definitely worth trying to keep those resources, because you will have to share the resources you use for training as well in your application. So you can apply all year round, and decisions are released between 4 and 6 weeks after submission as well. Ongoing requirements. Complete the trainer course. Oops. Wrong slide there. Let's duplicate that slide. So ongoing requirements is that you do actually have to complete 12 sessions a year and record them. Contribute to the community, the trainer community too. Also pass the updated skills test as well. So the new products that might come up as well, you need to redo that test. And the next one is the Google Certified Innovator. So this is designed for education throughout leaders who create new and innovative projects using Google for education tools. So I applied for this in last year, actually, yes, November last year, and I was accepted, but I didn't apply for it initially. And I'm going to be quite honest and open here. The reason why I didn't apply for it is I was making excuses, and it was kind of that imposter syndrome that my idea might not be good enough. So I made the excuse of that I was really busy. Again, luckily with my PON network, they kind of almost got on my back and said, look, Lawrence, apply for it. You've been talking about your idea. So you need to come up with an idea that's going to have an impact on teaching and learning or education in general. So my idea was to create an app for disengaged children for mentoring, because one of the issues that I found is that going into school and doing mentoring at different schools is that your contact time is limited. And then when you go back into the school, maybe a month later, all the hard work that you've done with them is more or less forgotten by the students, or you have to do a catch-up session to get them on board again. So I'm currently working on an app where students can be contacted through the app and keep them on task, keep them focused as well. And then daily, motivational quotes will go out to students, just keeping them motivated, and they can select the area in their life or in their education that they want to be motivated in as well. They can also reach out for some further support as well. And what that does is keeps the communication going. So I'm currently working on that, but it's completely a fantastic, I would almost say, a life-changing experience during the Innovator Academy. When I went there, I was blown away. It's almost when you go to a session and then you're just like, I need some downtime to take in everything I've just been thrown at me. So in this picture, this was the SW19. So shout out to all my SW19 people who may be in the chat. Clearly the best cohort. Sorry, Abid. So to get onto this, you need to have your Google Education Level 2 be certified and have Level 1. And as I mentioned earlier, you need to be able to identify a challenge in your classroom or your school that you would like to try and solve. You then have to interview maybe a few students or teachers, potentially the key holders. Those are the people that you need to interview and then film a 90-second video about the challenge and why you want to solve it. So like I said earlier, speaking to Guto, I'm so passionate about social mobility, and that's why I'm focusing on this app and reaching out to students that might not be able to get a mentor or speak to people in different walks of life. So that's what mine is on, and I just think transcend that through there. Apply before the deadline. Leave enough time. Don't do it last minute. Leave enough time to do it. So it's changed this time because the Innovator Academies used to be dotted around the world, but obviously with COVID-19, it's been cancelled. But we adapt, we pivot, like Cris said. What they're doing this time is an online, so the first ever online Innovator Academy, okay? And that's going to run over 8 weeks with approximately 3 hours of online sessions. I highly recommend you do the Innovator Academy. It's had such a change on the way I develop my sessions, the questions I ask, the processes that I go through, and out of it, fantastic friends that I've met from that academy, and I'm still friends with them now, and I'm always able to lean on them too. So just to make sure that you've got your level 1 and level 2, and the deadline for the online application is July the 10th. So I believe that's this Friday. So benefits of Google certifications is that recognition, you know, that you've worked hard and more or less you know what you're talking about. And I know you already know what you're talking about, but it's having that badge there, you know, that you've done that, you've gone through all the different certifications. Trainers and innovators, you get exclusive access to some fantastic communities as well, where you might be struggling with a problem in your school, in your district, in your academy, and you can reach out to them. Anytime I am having a problem, I'm able to reach out to my community and fantastic support. You get to learn about new tools and features in advance. You're also listed in a trainer directory. So if someone's in around your area looking for a trainer, they would be able to search for you as well. And opportunities to present at different events like this today. I've had the opportunity to talk to you, and hopefully people are getting something from this. So open yourself up to doing that. Share your skills with the world. And as I put in capitals, you get to meet great and supportive people. I can't keep on stressing that about your PON. So first things first, I would get started on doing your level 1 and just take your time if you want to and go through it. Set a bit of time aside each evening, or sign up for a boot camp that Guto will explain a bit more in detail and how you can do that. So what I'm just going to ask now is, what certifications or badges or accreditations do you currently have, and how have they been useful? So if you could just let me know in the chat. So brilliant. Yes, all 3. Yep, so someone's just put in, you can still do your level 1. You just need to make sure you have access to the Google tools as well. And just a key thing to say there, even if you're using G Suite currently, I think it is still worth to do your level 1. And also just check the curriculum as well if you're going to go and sit the test as well. So I can see some people are working towards their trainer. And these can be any other accreditations that you have outside of your Google certifications. Exactly, Rachel. If you're questioning whether you should just apply, just do it. Like I said, I was lucky enough to have fantastic people around me that said, go for it, you know, do it. And yeah, your PLN is absolutely massive. And just on that note, I'm going to showcase fellow colleagues' project from the Innovator Academy. And this kind of fits in nicely to what we're doing, what we're talking about, should I say, is your badgedtech.com. And it has a list of all the different certifications, certificates, accreditations. So a big shout out to Rachel. Rachel came up with this idea that a lot of people were looking around for different certifications, and they were all over the place. And she's now come up with this website where you can find them, and they're all listed there, and they're explained in fantastic plain English as well. Because sometimes you can look at a certification and be like, what do I need to do? And she's also gamified it as well. So each week, she'll challenge people to do a couple of certifications or accreditations or badges as well. And it has a great impact on teaching and learning. So some of the apps that you may use, like Screencastify or add-ons, they have badges and certifications too. So
I do have a couple of questions, if that's okay, Lawrence.
Absolutely, Guto.
You've answered a couple, actually, in that last bit now. War coming up. We have someone actually who sat the exam this morning for level 2. So good luck.
Excellent. Well done.
Results that you're hoping for there. Just what about the level 1 and level 2 exams, first of all. In terms of when you're sitting it, you mentioned all things like make sure the cats and the kids and the husband and wife are not around. But the actual exam, what do you have to do? Is it questions? Do you have to practically do something? How is it laid out?
So you have some multiple choice questions, and then you'll have some drag and drop and match scenarios as well. Then you have some performance-based ones, and that's showcasing you having to do a task in a Google application. So the exam will clearly state to you, we would like you, say, for example, to share a doc. You would then have to go into where they've specified you and who they've asked you to share that doc with and just showcase that as well. So it will kind of record what you're doing in terms of that.
I guess a lot of those ones are things you'd be doing every day. Make a slide, make a site. Well, maybe not every day, but you'd be commonly using it if you're using G Suite already.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the main things. A lot of the stuff that comes up in your level 1, people are more likely doing them every day, you know.
And the last one, this actually comes from Cris, this question. How's becoming a trainer innovator, how did that change your practice? One thing that you know that you wouldn't be doing unless you'd gone through that process first.
I think definitely with the innovator, and you mentioned it, is being prepared to fail and being okay with it. I think that's the main thing. I used to be one of those people, I still am to a certain degree, where I wouldn't push anything out or put anything out into public until it was perfect, and nothing is ever perfect. But in the academy, they almost beat that idea out of you, because I was very precious about my ideas before showing it to people. But actually, if you show it in that raw format, you actually get more feedback at the earlier stage that presents a stronger product in the end as well. And also, I would say, is leaning on your peers around you as well. That's definitely changed my practice too.
I think there's nothing, look at those comments now, the amount of people who mentioned their PLN or personal learning networks, that people that they Twitter, on Facebook, or just from talking to the amount of Hangouts groups I've got going on now with different groups of teachers, it makes a massive difference, doesn't it?
It makes a huge difference. And just to go back to the Innovator Academy, if you don't get in the first time, I do implore you to apply again and again as well. But also run your ideas. I feel like I'm doing like a whole promotion for PLN, is run your ideas through your PLN network and get some criticism, like constructive criticism back from them as well. But all start with your level 1, you know, walk before you can run, they say. And take it from there. And the thing is, it's almost like Skittles. Once you pass your level 1, you just can't stop taking another Skittle out of the pack. Or should I say Pringles? I got that completely wrong.
Skittles or Pringles, I'm the same on both of them. And actually, just late last week, I think, Google announced one more certification, didn't they?
Yes, the Google Coach certified. Certified Coach. Yeah,
Google Certified Coach, which is a new program that Google have announced last week. The main idea is not the same as a trainer. I guess the differentiation they put on it is that trainers are more ready to be talking to a group, training a group at a time, either in their own school or, as I know, Lawrence, that you do yourself, going into schools, doing a day session, and then maybe in a different school the next day. While coach is aimed towards more one-to-one, the people who spend the most of their day working one-to-one with teachers in their school, in their district, wherever they are, training them up, helping them with specific problems that they have. I know that in a lot of schools in the States, maybe Cris can tell me if it's the same in Canada, they employ tech coaches for a district or for a school, It's been common practice there for a while, maybe less common still in some UK schools, but I've seen it in plenty of international schools for sure as well. And the coaches aimed more towards that end, the people who are spending the majority of their time helping other teachers with their technology needs. It's a long course. It's, again, different again from innovator and trainers. It's a process. It can take a year to go through the process. And once you become a coach, you, just like trainers log in the training we do, a coach logs their hours, and 100 hours a week. Sorry, a year, 100 hours a week.
Just like 100 hours a week.
That would be a crazy job. I think that demand of 100 hours log every year shows that this is aimed towards, it's not aimed towards classroom teachers who do a bit of coaching on the side. It's aimed towards those where the majority of the time they do in their job is coaching other teachers. Nathan actually said that better than I could. It's designed for coaches, not for classroom teachers so much. And that's why for both trainers and for coaches, there is that requirement to log your trainings or log your hours, as it shows that being a trainer, being a coach, being an innovator, they're big things. They're not something that you can just sit down for 10 minutes, take a quick test and put that badge on your email. They're things that take work. And I think you said that innovator going to that academy changed you quite dramatically. And I got to say the same. That 3 days, you left with your head just exploding of, wow, right. Yes, I can approach things from a whole different way now.
Yeah, and I just think also just on that is being not afraid to pivot, and just like saying, okay, you're not meant to do this. And this is one of the key things. Don't go to Innovate Academy with your solution. If you do that, you're going to be broken in the first couple of minutes. It's actually just coming with your problem. And that's probably the hardest thing for me, was just coming with the problem and not starting to think of all the solutions. So the solution I had in my head, I didn't actually do that. It changed completely over the 3 days.
I think the amount of people who said that they came in with an idea in their head of what they were going to do, and then by the end of day one, they'd ripped it to pieces and changed 10 times over.
Absolutely.
Thank you massively, Lawrence, for joining us. Again,
thank you.
Invaluable contributions, and I'm sure we'll see you soon. Now, for the final session today, I'm actually turning to myself. I'm not inviting anyone else in here. We were supposed to have the wonderful company of Ben Rouse today. He was going to be our host. Unfortunately, he's not able to be with us, and therefore I'm taking on a session as well as the host. And I'm going to talk to you about creating instructional videos. We spoke a lot at the start about how being a teacher has changed over the past few months, and how we've moved from having our 30 pupils in front of us to be sitting in one of those offices that Cris showed. I've got a teacher from my school. She teaches the younger students, and she's literally pretty much built a classroom in a living room. She's got her piano there. She's got her number boards behind her. Things have changed. And one of the ways that teachers across the world have been presenting and getting their ideas across is now through video. So that's what I'm going to talk about for the next 20-25 minutes. So we're going to look at why is using video a great way of getting your lesson across, or getting ideas or your questions across when you are teaching either distance learning or hybrid learning, where the children aren't necessarily in front of you every day. We'll look at some of the best ways to record your presentations, to create your videos and share them, and then how exactly do you keep them engaged and stop them from just skipping through the video to say that they did it. I think the why answers itself. You're putting videos online, the expectations that children find them and do what you're asking, and simply finding a spreadsheet or a worksheet online and sharing that, it's not going to keep that engagement coming. They won't need that connection between teachers and pupil that they're used to from seeing you face-to-face in school. So being able to explain through video, for the same reason that we're doing this by video now, is so you can explain. Just as you would in class, you can stand in front of them and talk and explain the learning and what you want them to do. You can model the task. You can show your screen and show them, just as you would on a whiteboard behind you, you can model and show them what they should be doing. As I said, it keeps that teacher-student relationship going. And you can even give feedback through the video. Instead of just writing comments on the side, you can give them quick video feedback so that they hear it straight from your mouth, just as they would if you were coming to them and sitting by them in class and pointing a few things out. Now, one of the things that every school has been thinking of is whether they do their lessons live or whether it's a recorded video that they then put maybe on Google Classroom or on site for the pupil to see. And they both got benefits. Live has that two-way conversation. It means that you have a chance to hear back from them, be that through chat or through having them in the meet themselves talking. It does allow you to mute the children. If you don't want them interrupting all the time, you can mute them and just rely on chat. And of course, you can adapt your content to how they're reacting. Lawrence, I think, mentioned that one of the things that is hard is when you're doing things virtually is not seeing them, not having, I guess, the nodders, the people nodding to show you that they're understanding what's going on. And doing it live means that you still get a bit of that. Possibly you can see them, or at least you can see them in the chat. And finally, you have the ability to record. So just as we're recording the session today and sharing that out for anyone to watch at a later time, you can do the same with your lessons. So children who can't come and watch live will be able to watch it later. There's a big star on that one, as obviously if you're recording or even just going in live with meetings with children, it does bring those safeguarding questions across. And schools have been putting policies in place on safeguarding in terms of what they can and can't do when they're meeting live with pupils and pupils can talk back to them. The other option is to record, to create videos and to share them with children to watch whenever they need to. You have less safeguarding questions. You're not putting a camera in the child's house. It's just you recording yourself. You can have practice and retakes. I know that's something that a lot of staff that I've dealt with find quite important, is they might be too nervous to go live, but having that chance to practice and retake is useful. And finally, of course, it lets students watch at their own time and at their own pace. And not every child's able to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning every day. Maybe they're sharing devices with a sibling, or maybe the situation at home just means that they can't be at a set time each day. So we're mostly going to talk about the recorded side today, not meeting live, although we might dip in out of a live meeting here and there as well. So yes, you could just make a video by holding your phone up to your face and filming yourself. That's fine. You have a video of you talking, and sometimes that's the best way to do it. It gives you that real direct one-to-one connection of you just talking. But more often than not, you want to get your screen on there. Just as my screen is showing right now, I want to have that when I'm showing things to my pupils because I want to show them what to do. I want to model the good practice. I want to help them to reach where I want them to reach to do their work. So a few tips on that one. First of all, there are thousands of screen recording software out there. I'm sure everyone uses a different one. I've seen QuickTime being used. I've seen Adobe Spark being used. There are literally thousands available. Here's the tool that I use, which I thought I'd share. First of all, at the moment, with Google Meet, the recording being free and available to everyone, we've been using that to actually record our screen. Not just when we're doing live meetings and we want to record it for later watching, but we can have a teacher enter a meet on their own. So they create a Google Meet, they enter on their own, and they start recording. And then even though it's only them there in the meet at the moment, as they talk, as they present their screen, as they come back to show their face, all that is recorded in a video that they can then share separately through Classroom or so on. So you don't even need to find a specific screen recording. You can do it just with Google Meet at the moment. The other one that I'm a big user of is Screencastify. I know I was speaking to Lawrence this morning as he was using his, but Screencastify is a Google extension. It's not made by Google. It's a third-party one, but it adds to your Chrome. You can see I've got mine just hidden behind the Acer logo up there. And what happens is, as soon as you've got it and you've logged in, once you want to record your screen, you click on that extension, click record, it gives you a quick countdown, and then here you go. It's recording whatever you're doing on the screen. Record your voice if you wanted to. You can have yourself in the corner if you want to as well, or you can just switch that off. As soon as you're finished and you stop recording, it automatically saves in your Google Drive. So you don't have to go find it on the computer, upload it here, share it there. It's straight in your Drive, ready for you to use. The free version, I want to say, has 5 minutes limit on it, and you might have a watermark. For a lot of stuff, that's enough. Personally, that's one of the software that I actually pay, I want to say $20 a year something along those lines, because I find it so useful, not just for full lessons to the pupils, but if another teacher messages me saying, oh, how do you do this? Oh, do you remember you showed me that before? How do you do it? I can quickly record my screen and send that link directly to the teacher to watch. Again, no need to download, upload, and so on. It's there in my drive. So that Meet one, I would love to take credit for coming up with it. I actually stole it off Jenny, who is one of Google's Edu on Air trainers, her idea. It's a brilliant one because you've got the screen recording built in. You don't need a separate software. It's there as long as you still have that recording feature, which I want to say is staying on Google Meet until end of September. I think that's the current situation. So moving on, you've chosen your software, Meet, Screencastify, whatever else. You know how to record your screen. What are you going to put on there? Now, your face, obviously, for some parts of it, but for the majority, you're probably going to be sharing whatever's on your screen. And that might be as simple as just having your slides up there and running through your slides as you're talking, as you would when you have them behind you in the class. But if you want to get more hands-on, more interactive, and be able to explain things, Jamboard might be a great use here. So for those of you who are not familiar with Jamboard, I think it flashed up for a moment during Chris's presentation earlier, but Jamboard is part of G Suite. So if you've got G Suite, you've already got Jamboard built in. If you search for Jamboard, by the way, one of the things that'll come up is a big, expensive, high-tech, physical whiteboard. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the Jamboard app or service that's part of G Suite, so it's free for any school in G Suite to use. You'll find it by going to jamboard.google.com, or in your drive, click on New, More, and Jamboard will be an option. And the best way to describe it is as your own personal digital whiteboard. So I can click on the pen over here, and I can let it load up properly. I can write on there. Sorry, my handwriting is absolutely abysmal when it comes to writing on a screen. This is the browser version. So it has most of the features, but if you have the Android app, which runs on Chromebooks, on phones, or on iPhone apps as well, you'll have a few more features. It can auto-detect your handwriting and turn it into text. You can have a bit of auto-draw where you start drawing and it does it for you. But most of the features you need is built into the browser. So one example that we use it in class is, let's say I'm teaching a bit of maths and I want to show them the column addition. I might be explaining here that the question is 23 plus 48. And I'll show them that if you add the 8 and the 3, you get 12. So you put the 1 down there, and then 2 and 4 and 1, and so on. You can show them as you're talking. Now, if you pair that with a screen recorder, you're then making a video where you can explain as you're drawing. The video recording is not built into Jamboard, but that's why you use, be it Screencastify or Meet or however else you want to use to do so. Not just writing on there, I can add pictures and such as well. So if I'm going to the left here, you can see I've got the add the picture option, and I can search in here for a picture to add into my presentation, either upload it or go to my drive, or just go into Google's image search and search in there. So let's find a heart diagram, for example. Let that load for a second, and I'm going to go for this one here and put that into the work. And we'll see if my Wi-Fi is doing well enough to run this session and find that photo. Yes, it is. One note on adding photos. When you're doing it, be it through Jamboard, be it through Google Sites, Google Slides, it's got Safe Search switched on. So if I search for chicks on there, I get wonderful pictures of cute, fluffy chicks. So if you are using this and screen recording, you don't have to worry about searching and having pictures that you don't want to be seen in the video appearing. Now that I've got my part of a heart in there, I can move it around and put it where I want it. Let's put it in the middle there. And I can bring that pen out again and start explaining. I can say, here you'll find the left atrium. The left atrium, I am not a science teacher. I have no idea what each part of the heart does, but let's say that the left atrium pumps blood out of the heart, down into the body. Or if I don't want to write on top of it, I have the highlighter tool here, and I can start things like, there is the right atrium, the right ventricle is over here, and you can just highlight the parts that you need while recording so the pupils can see what you're talking about. You can also add these post-it notes in the corner. So when Cris was mentioning earlier that she's using less post-it notes than she used to. I'm sure one of the ways that she's managing that is by doing things using something like a Jamboard, in that I can click on the little sticky notes option here. I can write anything in there, choose my color, and that puts it on the work. And again, I can move that around and place it as I wish. And one of the things that I've used it for is, yes, while recording my screen, I can show the task, but I can then share my Jamboard, make a copy for each child, maybe in classroom, and I can give them the task to do. So they could come in here and they could label the continents for me, either all together, do it collaboratively if I'm doing a live session, or make a copy for each one so they can do it in their own time. And that's true on any part of Jamboard and screen recording. So I mentioned Screencastify earlier. We've got a Screencastify for our pupils as well, just the free version. And what it means is they can make their own explainer videos. So when I was talking about that heart, if I've been teaching them about parts of the heart, I've been showing them on here what to do. Their task then could be to go off and make their own video, recording their screen, talking, using Jamboard to talk about the heart. So not only can you make videos, you can have your pupils make them as a way of showing their understanding. So they're not just writing a paragraph every single time about what they've learned and so on. Now, if you haven't got a touchscreen, or you find that it's hard to use something like Jamboard when you're using the mouse, it's much harder to write, some people find, there is one more way of getting your doodles and your drawings and your working out on screen, and that's to go the low-tech way. So the idea here is that, once again, you are sharing into a Meet. So you've set up a Meet on the computer, you've got yourself in there, and you've got yourself in there again on the phone. So both of them are together in the Meet. You're recording it on the screen. You've got the record function going, while the phone is simply pointed down onto your paper. So you've got a glass of water there, a phone on top, and a book to keep it stable. And then whenever you write on that paper, the phone sees it. And because you want to meet with your phone, it appears on the screen as well. It's a very low-tech way of getting what you're writing onto the screen. I had someone ask this week ago, how do you plug a visualizer into your device so you can film from the visualizer? I have no idea, but this will work instead. Lucky for me, I prefer to use my touch screen and to have the Jamboard to draw on. But if you're more of a drawer with a hand, you can do it in a more low-tech way, or even just film on your phone. If you've got the skills to edit that into your main video, then that would work as well. Everyone's different. Some people are great at video editing. I've seen videos from some teachers with graphics flying in from every corner, with videos appearing behind them and so on. That's not all of us. Some people would be scared to even think of how to do so. I'm somewhere in the middle. I can do a little video editing, but nothing close to the professional stuff that I'm seeing. One thing that I do is WeVideo is the one I use, but again, there's hundreds of thousands of different out there. Obviously, if you're an iPad, iMovie is by far the most common one there. Any app that can edit, try and find one that you're comfortable doing the simple stuff with. Cutting off the start of your video, cutting off the end so they don't see you going to stop recording at the end. Adding maybe a title at start. Simple stuff, nothing that you're going to need a massive editing suite package for, nothing that you're going to need to have real media skills for, just enough so you can tidy up your video by cutting the start, cutting the end, and maybe putting a few titles on there. Don't feel that you have to learn a whole new skill to do this. I'm a primary school teacher, and using iMovie, for example, is one thing that we've been using with pupils for a long time. And if my year twos can do it, I know that any teacher can get there and do it as well. Since I'm working on a Chromebook, WeVideo is the one that I use personally. But as I said, there's loads of other ones that you can be using. It's one thing to make the video. It's another thing to share it. Google Classroom or Google Sites are the obvious way of sharing them as far as I'm concerned. I can either put them in Classroom as part of the task or put them on a site and encourage the children to go watch it there. It's a second thing to keep them engaged on that video, to keep them watching it and to learn something from it. It's easy enough to press play on a video. It's just as easy to turn and do something else while that video's playing in the background. So a few ideas around it. First of all, obviously, you can build your whole task around it. So you could just have a video and a form at the end with a quiz. So a self-marking quiz you can build in Google Forms. You can have your video, and at the end, there's questions about the things you've just been discussing. Or make it more interactive, have a Jamboard in there so that you can share it with the pupils afterwards. So yes, I may have used the Jamboard while I was presenting, but now I've made a version to share with the pupils. Maybe as a collaborative space, they can all come into and work. Or in Classroom, obviously, one of the options is to make a copy for each child. So now they've all got a copy of that Jamboard, and they can all do the tasks that I was showing during my video. And that's one of the great things about Classroom, is that it makes it that easy to share. The days of having to email pupils with, right, here's work, open this file, make a copy, all that's gone. I can just share it directly through Classroom. And the second idea in terms of keeping them engaged is actually meaning that I'm going to switch to the editing view of this presentation. I'll give it a second to load up. There we go. So in the past, I've used a website called Edpuzzle. I'm not sure if anyone's come across Edpuzzle before, but it's a way of having a video, maybe from YouTube, maybe from your own collection, and putting questions in the middle, chopping it up with questions so that pupils can answer. This is the simpler maybe way of doing it without having to go to a separate platform. You could have something similar built into your slides. So let's say, for example, that I've got a slide deck with a wonderful video here. You might know Seti. He does great videos on his channel. I think he's over 100,000 subscribers on his educational technology channel now, but he also does great things on the AppsEvents YouTube channel. But let's say that I'm sharing this with my pupils and I want them to answer a few questions as they're going through it. I've made a slide, I put the video on it, and after selecting the video, I can go to Format Options. So let's click on that and let it load up. Now, the first thing I can do, if I want to, by the way, unrelated to my topic at the moment, but you can mute the audio or have it autoplay, so that when you're presenting, it comes up automatically. Not what I need right now. This is the important part for me here. So let's say I want them to watch the first 30 seconds of the video before they face the question. So I'm just going to change the end time to 30 seconds. And then next to it, I'm going to ask my question. So that's changed to 30 seconds. I don't know what my question is going to be, but let's say that I put my question in there. I can then move on and create a second slide. So I can copy that, paste it into my next slide, and maybe in the next one, I'm running it from 30 seconds to a minute and a half. So they're going to watch a further minute of that video. Let's just change those times. And now I've got question number 2, asking them here. What I do then, once I've got the slides set up with a question for each segment of the video, I can share that through Classroom, make a copy for each child so that they can come in here and they can write their answer, watch the 30 seconds or the minute or whatever much of the video, and put their answer in below. I've got to agree with Karen on there. I also love Edpuzzle. It's a way of doing this that built in, so you're not just doing it through slides, but it's a great way of doing it without having to go to a separate platform all the time. So that's using slides and the format option. Again, you click on the picture, and then you click on the format options at the top there to bring that up. I'm very aware that time is coming to a close here. Videos are a key part. Now, we mentioned moving our schools from this period of distance learning. Some schools have started becoming live already. Others are doing that balance of hybrid learning where they're in school for part of the week and home for other parts. I don't know what the world's going to look like when the next term starts after a lot of you have your holidays, but certainly there's a scope for schools to still have children working at home for some part of the week. And if that's so, sending work home with a video is a much better way of getting their engagement, of making them feel that they're not just ticking boxes and setting work that's irrelevant and not directly involving their teacher. Having videos of you there really does get them engaged and get them feeling that they've still got that connection to school even when they're working from home. That's all on that there. I'm going to bring Lawrence back in here. Lawrence, you were mentioning Screencastify with me this morning that you're using it. Anything else that you use in terms of screen recording?
That's the main one I like to use. I find that that's quite powerful for me in terms of that. I tend to use it mainly for actually step-by-step guides as well. Right.
So yeah. You film yourself doing things bit by bit.
Yeah. So explanation of how to do a task, particularly during distance learning is normally you would just showcase it in the class if a student had a problem. But if there was a general misconception on stuff, I would then actually create a film or a video of how to do it and voice over it, saying these are the steps in order to actually, for example, to get into Google Classroom, because in some cases, some schools didn't have Google Classroom set up. So that's been very helpful.
We've had on our school sites, we had to put video up to parents, how to use
exactly, yeah.
Get used to it there. I'm not sure if we through in the comments there. Maybe we can load them up and have a quick look, but have a go. If you haven't been recording yourself, you've been putting videos out there without, putting lessons out there without recording yourself, have a go. Even if you're that nervous type who doesn't really like to be on camera, you get used to it quite quickly when it goes up. But it's just for you and your pupils. So the same people that look at you talking every day anyway when you're in school. I did bring you back for another reason, Lawrence. I know that at the start of our 2 and a quarter hours, we were discussing how things have changed and how we've adapted to working virtually. And I know that coming up, you've got quite an event yourself that you've been creating. Do you want to mention a bit about it for me?
Yeah, so I came up with an idea about 4 weeks ago. Yeah, I realized it was 4 weeks ago because it's been quite hectic over the last 4 weeks. That a lot of year 10 students will not be having the chance to go on work experience. So I thought, actually, what's the best way we could get them to access the outside world and talk to professionals that they normally wouldn't be able to gain access to? So I came up with the idea of actually hosting an online careers fair for year 10 students. And to be honest, I thought it would just be 100 students that might sign up. And then within the first 2 weeks, we've had 2,000 students register so far. And I'm sure that's gone up already. And we have a range of different speakers from different industries. So we've got a surgeon, we've got a music lawyer, we've got a music singer, we've got an insurance specialist for the Bank of England. So we have a wide range of people coming online and talking. And it's also now been opened up from 2 students in year 13. So that's from the age of 15 to 19. So it's 3 days with 25 speakers and 2 sessions a day. And we've just also added a CV workshop as well. So we're going to be teaching students how to create an effective CV. Now I need to go and dust off my CV and see if it is still effective.
I would not like to look at how my CV looks.
So I'm looking really forward to it. And just want to say it's completely free as well. It's been sorted out by Just a Guy Foundation, which is a social enterprise that I've founded to work with disengaged students and students that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, allowing them to have access to opportunities they might not have been able to get. And
do schools sign up for it en masse, or is it that students have to come in and individually sign up for it?
So due to the response, schools can sign up their different year groups, but also I've had some students contact and say, is this something I can sign up individually? Because as we're aware, is that not all schools are back fully, but I've been taken aback by that some students are taking their own initiative and trying to sign up as well. So yeah, either way, individually, all schools can sign up. And I know she just put a link in at the bottom. If you go to that link, you'll be able to find out more about the event. So that starts on Monday next week. So from the 6th to the 8th of July. And it's all free.
The link is bit.ly and then in capital letters, JAGCF, all in capital. I think it's quite important there. Yeah. It's fantastic. I remember you mentioned it in passing to me a few weeks ago, and I don't think either of us realized the time that you'd be talking about over 2,000 students signed up to join.
Absolutely. So guys, please share it around. I want to make sure students get the most from this event and get a chance to ask questions. There will be a Q&A session to the guest speakers as well. So really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. I'm going to bring Chris in back for a second, just so that we can have one final hello. Hi, Chris. Just a question for both of you. Summer's coming. what's the one thing do you think will be very different in your job or in your work in 2 months' time when schools come back in those places?
Oh, wow.
Just to drop you right in it at the end.
I'll let you go first, Chris.
I thought you were going to ask me where I get my Post-it notes or something. Lowball. So what do you, the biggest difference? I think the biggest difference will be the flexibility of people's thinking in developing our school experiences for the kids. I think for a long time, how we traditionally approach a lot of the projects we do in schools, they're very large scale and they're planned very far ways in advance. And what this has done is put us in this really short time frame where we had to be much more adaptive and responsive to what's happening in our schools. So I think that's sort of that idea and that mindset is something we're going to carry over into September to continue to really hone in on what the needs are of our students to make those changes. But one of the discussions we had last week with the meeting of several school leaders across our organization was this whole idea of we are throwing out the rule books in terms of how we're using technology in schools. So when we first went to these remote learning models, teachers were trying to use technology to do teaching in an older model. But through the last few months, where we have moved as an organization is this idea of actually we can reimagine these learning experiences for our students. So I think there's going to be lots of talk over the summer about how that will look like, what that will look like in September.
Brilliant. Rollins?
How do I follow that?
You should have gone first.
Yeah. I think is how do we keep the momentum? I think in a short amount of time, like Chris said, a lot of staff have learned digital skills. And what I don't want to see is that it was just for this period of time. It actually is followed through when we go back to school, because we've whet the appetite of our kids with this technology, of use of different technology in the classroom. And I just think if people join their PLN, obviously, but just keep on going with it. You know, I think I can say you've gone through the pain now. It's about enjoying the great moments when you go back to school, and you know, the kids are going to look forward to it, of using that technology as well.
Not just the children, as in the teachers who are maybe more worried about technology in the past, who didn't have the confidence to dive in, have had to dive in now. So it's finding, I think, agree that it's finding how the lessons we've learned for the past 2 or 3 months, how that's going to help us, even when we're back in school full time. The new skills, the new ideas, and the things we've learned might be a big help to us. Well, will be a big help to us moving forward. Just to have our goodbyes, Bob, I'm going to bring you back in, if that's okay, just right at the end here. How are you doing?
Hi, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Been hiding in the back there for a good hour and a half now. Thank you for staying with us for the whole part.
My pleasure.
To finish us off, first of all, hope that you've enjoyed the 2.5 hours that we've been here now. There's plenty more videos if you want to watch on the AppsEvents YouTube channel. There was actually a whole other summit running earlier today from running by James, who leads AppsEvents in Asia, and he had guests there, whole range of different sessions. So if 2.5 hours isn't enough for you, you can jump straight onto the YouTube channel and do another 2.5 hours with another range of speakers for this morning, or maybe leave it and have a go in a few days instead. We're back on, I want to say, July the 30th with another summit. So we'll have different sessions for you then. So please go and register for that one, just as you did for this one. Also, if you're a podcast listener, I find I've lost time to watch podcasts recently because I'm not spending so much time in the car driving back and forth from work. But if you are still finding the time to do so, the International School Podcast is a great one to listen to. So if you want, right, Lawrence mentioned boot camps over and over when program certification. You don't need to go through boot camp to go and try your level 1, level 2 certification. But if you feel that you want to, a boot camp is, when it was live, it was a whole day event, very hands-on, going through the types of things that you'll need to know or we need to be able to do to get your certification. There are virtual ones running right now at the moment for level 1 and for level 2. There is a code there on screen for you, VIP10, which can get you 10% off if you're signing up for one of those bootcamps or for any other future events. I've mentioned it more than once. It's been on the bottom a few times. If you haven't yet, do pop to gsummit.link/Acer, fill in that form for a chance to win free tickets to a bootcamp or summit in the future, be them online or when we manage to get back to live ones in the hopefully near future. And thanks again for Acer for helping us on that front and for helping us provide this session for you all today. So that's my thank you. That's my goodbye. No sure I need your pictures on screen since you're all actually here on the screen instead of your pictures. You can all pause for me. That's about it there. Massive thank you for joining us today, all three of you. It's been fascinating, and even as someone who, Lawrence and Chris, I've listened to you two speak so many times, I'm still learning more every time I do. Similar, Bob, thank you so much for joining us. For everyone else watching, thank you. Share if you think it was worth watching, share it with your colleagues. They can come and watch at their own convenience. Hopefully we'll see you again on July the 30th, but that's it for us today. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.